Well, good morning. Thank you all for being with us today. I'm Senator Rebecca Warren. I represent the 18th District, which is the majority of the population of Washtenaw County, including the communities of Ann Arbor, Ypsilanti, Saline, Milan, and the townships that surround them. And we're here today to talk with you about the very sobering and important issue of domestic and sexual violence. Nationally, 3 in 10 women and 1 in 10 men have experienced physical violence, stalking, sexual violence by a partner, resulting in fear, a concern for their safety, or a need for services. Here in Michigan, 1 in 3 women will be impacted by domestic violence. Domestic violence is not confined to certain neighborhoods or demographics. It can happen anywhere. It can happen in any zip code, in any neighborhood, anytime. And it's incumbent upon us as legislators to do everything we can to prevent future sexual and domestic violence, to ensure the safety of our survivors, and to make sure survivors are not re-victimized. So, as the Progressive Women's Caucus, we have gathered together and introduced a package of bills, bringing forward for introduction today a package of bills to address the gaps that we see in Michigan law. We want to make sure that every survivor has the resources they need to put their lives back on track and to move forward without fear or intimidation. No 2 cases of domestic or sexual violence or stalking are the same, and neither are our survivors. So the bills we're introducing will make sure that we address those differing needs. It's my honor today to introduce you to one of my constituents, Ms. Nicole Beverly, who is joining us today and has agreed to share how domestic violence and stalking have affected her and her children. Ms. Beverly.
Thank you. Good morning. I am a survivor of domestic violence and stalking. I've been dealing with it since 2009 when I left my ex-husband. I'm incredibly thankful and grateful that our legislators are taking this issue seriously and are introducing these new bills to better protect victims and survivors in our state. While my experiences have been frightening and they have been at times frustrating and difficult, in many ways I am one of the lucky ones. I was lucky to have a job at the time that my ex-husband was stalking me actively that allowed me to leave for 2 weeks to seek refuge in Canada. I was lucky to have a job that moved my location to protect me when he was on the loose for 5 days and no one knew his whereabouts. They could have fired me. I was lucky to be at a job that allowed me to time off from multiple court dates that were rescheduled time and time again. Many domestic violence survivors lose their jobs as a result of stalking and re-victimization. Then they're forced to either go back to their abusers or oftentimes will end up homeless. I was also lucky to have a family and friends that could house us after we left and to help me replace all of the belongings that we had to leave behind. I was again lucky to have an understanding landlord that let me out of my lease early because my ex-husband was able to find us through a utility company that gave him our address. Many victims become homeless when they're not allowed to move, to get out of their leases and have fees that they can't afford to pay. And again, as I mentioned earlier, it's one of the leading causes of homelessness for women and children. I'm hopeful about our state developing an address confidentiality program. That's one of my biggest concerns as we were believing my ex-husband was going to be released from prison. Actually, October 24th was the date he was set for release before the Attorney General brought new charges. And without an address confidentiality program, I did not feel safe staying in our state. He would be able to find me very easily, so I'm very hopeful that a new program in our state would allow victims to stay and maybe victims from other states to seek refuge here. Our homicide rate is not the best. Maybe these programs could help reduce the homicide rate in our state. I'm looking forward to working together with our legislators on these bills and hopefully more in the future. I'm hopeful that we can gain bipartisan support on many of these bills and then can together force other issues such as DV education and prevention and looking at our sentencing guidelines for domestic violence in our state. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nicole, for being here with us today and for sharing your story with us. We're grateful for the courage and tenacity that you show every day. You've not only been a motivation to other survivors, but certainly to us as legislators. We look to our constituents to give us these good ideas, even when they come from sad situations, to help us move forward as a state. My name is Vanessa Guerra, and I serve as state representative for Michigan's 95th House District, which includes parts of Saginaw County. For the past month, the Progressive Women's Caucus has worked on various legislative initiatives to recognize those survivors of domestic abuse, as well as to better equip state laws to help those who are in domestic violence situations. At the beginning of October, we introduced and the House adopted House Resolution 167 to declare October 2017 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in the state of Michigan. The bill package we are introducing today will work to address some of the gaps in laws that leave our survivors of domestic violence without adequate support. Part of our support for survivors bill package would require an employer who offers sick leave as a fringe benefit to allow the sick leave to be used for providing or receiving assistance because of domestic violence, sexual assault, or stalking. No one chooses to have their lives interrupted or put on hold because of a stalker or an abuser. Yet, according to the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, survivors of intimate partner violence lose a total of 8 million days of paid work every year. This is because survivors typically have to miss work in order to receive legal assistance, medical assistance, and counseling. Survivors do not choose to have this happen to them, and they certainly should not be punished by losing a day's pay from their job while they're working through the consequences of this abuse. Our package also includes a bill that will require a person who is accused of domestic violence, sexual assault, or stalking, and who is legally served with a personal protection order to relinquish all firearms in their possession. Research shows that the presence of a gun in a domestic violence situation increases the risk of homicide by 500%. And while it's certainly within our Second Amendment rights to keep and bear arms, we simply cannot condone a firearm being present in what is already an emotionally charged and violent situation for the survivor's sake. Another component of our support for survivors package includes a resolution to urge Congress to ensure appropriate funding for the Crimes Victims Act and the Violence Against Women Act, among other federal programs. The current administration has already indicated that they would like to remove and reallocate billions of dollars from the Crime Victims Fund. Establishing a precedent that it's okay to reallocate this funding from the Crime Victims Fund and giving it to other priorities is a threat to our public safety and our public health, both here in Michigan and across the United States. It's critical that we preserve that funding for what it's actually supposed to be used for. Another provision included in our support for survivors package will prevent landlords and real estate agents from discriminating against individuals on the basis of domestic violence, sexual assault, or stalking. And as Ms. Beverly stated, she was fortunate to have a landlord that was willing to work with her, but we know that's not the case for all individuals that are survivors. We also provide eviction protection for survivors of domestic violence. According to the Workplace Violence Institute, half of the homeless cases in the United States involving women are attributed to domestic violence. It is terrible enough that survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, and stalking have not felt supported by the laws that we as legislators are responsible for crafting. It is worse yet that they often find themselves on the streets as a result of their abusive situations, and the Progressive Women's Caucus, along with our colleagues in the House and the Senate, are committed to putting an end to that shameful cycle. And that's, again, why we came together today with this package of bills, because we recognize that our Michiganders deserve better. And with this package, we think that we can achieve some of those goals. My colleague, State Rep. Christy Pagan, will now continue telling you more about our bill package and our ongoing efforts to ensure that our state laws are protecting survivors of domestic abuse. Thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Guerra. My name is Christy Pagan, State Representative, representing Western Wayne County, Canton, Van Buren Township, and the City of Belleville. The bills we are introducing today are a major step forward in supporting survivors and their families so they can find safety and healing. One of the bills in our package will ensure that an individual is not disqualified from receiving unemployment benefits as a result of domestic violence, stalking, or sexual assault. We need to ensure workplace benefits do not hinder a survivor's ability to escape or rebuild their life in a critical time. It is the very least we can do to support survivors where our state fails to provide them with support and services that they need to get help. This is why we've been working so hard to bring about address confidentiality. As you are undoubtedly aware, a couple weeks ago, a group of senators announced their interest in working on a set of bills to address this issue. For years, the Progressive Women's Caucus has been working hard on this issue, and we are very grateful to see other state legislators joining in these efforts. Our many attempts to create such a program in Michigan has given us valuable insight on what would work and what would not work for our state. And we are looking forward to working with the Senate work group in creating meaningful and effective program for survivors in Michigan. No one wishes to go through what survivors of domestic violence and intimate partner violence have to go through. And it is unequivocally wrong for our laws that fail to protect them. We should be providing the greatest amount of protection possible to survivors, not driving them out of Michigan because we not keep their information safe, which is why we are fully supportive of any efforts to create address confidentiality program in our state, and we look forward to assisting and working with anyone interested in doing so. Because our support for Survivors Bill package today is just a first step in ensuring that every survivor feels protected under Michigan law and that we are able to meet the individual and unique needs of all survivors. The Progressive Women's Gender Violence Task Force is committed to ensuring that these are ongoing efforts. In the coming months, we'll be working to bring together interested parties to discuss other important areas around ending gender violence. These efforts will include renewing our state sentencing guidelines and training requirements for those responding to intimate partner violence, as well as making sure we are providing adequate funding for domestic violence program and prevention efforts. This is absolutely a nonpartisan issue. This issue transcends across families and genders, and we are committed to ending violence against women and men once and for all. This, again, is a matter of basic human decency and compassion. We are open to working with anyone who is willing to make Michigan and our residents safer for survivors.